And are we live? Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about. Woo!
You're actually Andrew. Congratulations on not living up to your promise of doing a little update video to explain where the fuck you've been, to explain your little bit of computer trouble. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that happened.
Yeah,
He had PC issues, and he forgot to make a little video update about that.
to say the least, computer go burr.
Andrew, I am making my way to the stream to manage the comments right now.
Making my way downtown, walking fast, faces passing.
Making my way downtown. There's a hooker at home who I want to pound.
I like Jim's sudden.
Andrew, me and Steve Rambo, we're good. Do me a favor, go into the NSFW chat on BLNER, tap the comment that Jim replied to, and see what photo is attached to it.
Not right now.
Doesn't want to, I don't think that's a good idea because he's eating. I wanted to see his reaction. You're eating anyway.
Panda. Tastes like chicken. But anyway, though. Finally, welcome back to Burning Subjects after like 2 months or something like. Oh yeah, it was just about a month. Whoa, 4 people already. But anyway, though, today we're gonna be doing the continuation of our last one before the the 2021 in review thing, where we're gonna be covering some more canceled restorations because Twitter is too much.
Yeah, that website's from Twitter. Yeah, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. All 3 of them are social media platforms that can go die in a puddle of their own blood.
Yes, and
I tried using Parler, but their whole website was brought down. Look Twitter, look Facebook. Oh well.
But before we get to the matters at hand, I need to cut out the pictures of the 9 locomotives that are going on the cool wall again. Yeah. But to say the least, we gotta. Oh, and not to mention, while I'm cutting this out, I might as well talk about last time we tried this. I actually brought in a selection of locomotives to put on the cool wall, which we already put those on the cool wall because we already had them, and we decided to anyway. So the ones that are now on the cool wall that are different, there's a German fireless locomotive. The K4 is finally on the cool wall. There is a Baltimore and Ohio C16. What else? Oh yeah, there's a Santa Fe switcher up there. There is also, if I remember, oh yeah, there's the War Department 280. There's a Canadian National 6060. There's also the LMS Turbine that is up there.
The LMS Turbomotive.
Yes, which was
you better put 6202, the Turbomotive. It's Sub-Zero.
Oh yes, it is actually. It is right here. Take a look.
Good, because yes, excellent. Because it was actually one of the better steam turbine locomotives.
Yes, it was one of the most successful of those.
Yeah, that's what I said. It's one of the better steam turbines.
And
as for that German fireless engine, even though I'm the European guy here, seriously uncool.
I put it. The funny thing is, most of us actually agreed that it was a pretty cool locomotive, so we put it in the lower section of cool.
Oh god damn it!
What? Firelesses are cool.
I thought it was seriously uncool.
It's a fireless, Jim.
Yeah, I don't really care about fireless locomotives. Yeah?
You don't, but what about everyone else? Oh boy, look, this is the reason I wanted to make the cool wall, so that we could have confrontations.
Okay, we're in the 2022 debates about steam locomotives,
all right.
Especially fireless ones.
But, as well as that,
Madara.
there's...
Yes, Madara. Trains.
Yes. And as well as that, we also have an MT. There's a BR standard mogul up there, if I remember if that's what it is. Then we also have Canadian Canadian Pacific Mikado, which I've
seen. It was 5361, or at least the same class as that.
Yes. Oh no, it actually is 5361 in the picture. Yeah, but I changed the rules of the cool wall. So every time that we do a episode of every time that we do an episode of Burning Subjects,
Hey Andrew, you drop your volume. I can't hear you on the computer very well. Go away.
Anyway, though, so here's how it's gonna work. So instead of doing 6 American locomotives and 3 British ones like we had been doing, we're gonna divide it into 4 sections. So 3 American locomotives, 3 British locomotives, 2 German locomotives, and wait, no, it was 2 Canadian locomotives and 1 German locomotive for every episode we do. So, because of that, we also have a lot more variety and a lot more people can be satisfied, especially Jim. You know, because now you get a chance of having some familiar territory on this wall.
Jawohl.
Yes, as well as Dan, which Dan's not here this time.
Because he's stuck at this educational camp called school.
Yeah, he's stuck at school now. But we decided to honor his side of it, and not to mention, for some reason, there have been more Canadian locomotives to operate in the U.S. than there have to operate in actual Canada, which is ironic to me. But nevertheless, we have 9 locomotives in total, which I will repeat. There's 3 from America, 3 from Britain, 2 from Canada, and 1 from Germany.
Wait, for the whole stream, or is this just the cool wall?
It's just for the cool wall, which I'm still cutting these. I know, I got tiny little metal scissors. Look at these. These are tiny.
Why didn't you have them cut out beforehand then?
Because all right, but
Andrew.
Yeah,
you didn't think of that, did you?
I did not. I did not think of that. But it was. But anyway, though, let me just. But I'm gonna say that actually, we're gonna put some of them on the cool. Okay. Actually, here's our first American one since I got it. I got this is the first American.
Give me a minute. I
Now,
need to.
where is?
Check on something on one of my engines in Gettysmond. Yes.
Nice shirt, Andrew.
Thanks.
I can see a Western locomotive.
Yeah, it's a 440. But where did I put? I freaking.
I'd rather a 240.
Okay. But where did I? Where did I put my tape? Sorry, it's been a long time since we've done Burning Subjects, and I'm probably a little bit disorganized. Found it! Found my...
Probably you just are disorganized.
Yeah. Alright, but I have discovered the tape, and watch as I fail because I barely have any fingernails.
Jim? Hello, I have come here just to give you this quick message of you are gay. Okay, see ya.
Wait, who was that?
Hey, by the way, Jim. What? When you said what you said, I was half tempted to not say ooh. I was half tempted to say, thank me harder, Daddy.
And it would appear that I believe some rites truly may have already begun. We have this we have this chap called Gruff who said that he wanted to see a literal dildo on the wall.
It's Josh.
Wait, that's Josh? No, I'm the Gruffinator. I don't know who that is.
All right, but anyway, though, here's our first locomotive of the day, which is an interesting one. It is the non-triplex version of the of this. It's this.
Oh, the Virginia 2880.
Yeah, it's
I say average or
I honestly am actually inclined to put it like somewhere in between average and cool because while I do not like the triplex version, this I actually like, surprisingly. And not to mention it looks cool. It looks really cool. So let's put it in between average and cool. Like just above the S15 here. There we go. All right. Well, while I'm cutting out more, let's take a look at the.
Oh my god, I can't believe I made that link. So I heard somewhere not to overlook a small steam locomotive. That's just like saying never overlook a little penis.
Excuse me.
Anyway, what shall we do with Gruff? What shall we do with Gruff? What shall we do with this mysterious cowman?
Milk it. I mean, what?
Or do we banish him from the Shadow Realm? Because honestly,
I don't think he's related to the.
dildos. Andrew, is 611 on the cool wall? And if so, is it towards the bottom end?
No, it's 611 or the entire J class is not on the wall.
I was gonna say that would have answered his question for a literal rolling dildo.
But honestly, the guy Gruff, I think we can excuse him because I think they might just be a new viewer, maybe. But anyway, okay.
You know, it could be Jake in disguise. Wait, no, it can't be.
All right, but okay. This we have a lot of locomotives today that are questionable. Mostly the questionable ones are mostly from America, ironically. So our second locomotive, if I can finish cutting this out, this is all right. So
Get to the point.
it's the Baltimore and Ohio 4444 Duplex.
Wait.
I would say right in the middle between average and mediocre because of the fact that mechanically it's an outright failure.
But it looks cool. You gotta admit.
I'm gonna say
it looks nicer than the Pennsylvania duplexes.
I'm gonna say it should be on.
Take that, PRR fans.
I think it should be on the cool because 444444444. Anyway.
I think that we'll put it in average and mediocre. Like somewhere just behind the Q2. That would be a nice little spot for this thing. That would be fine. All right.
I keep forgetting there's a steam locomotive named the Mallard.
All right, let's put that right there.
You're kidding, right?
There we go.
No, it's like I know there's a steam locomotive called the Mallard, but sometimes I keep forgetting about it.
All right, there's that, and then oh my God, why?
You're whinging. What appears to be?
What's the problem, man?
I'm disappointed in the third American locomotive.
Oh dear, what is it this time?
I think we finally might have another locomotive that will go into the uncool section. But
what is it?
This.
What is it, Nissan?
What is it, under son?
It's the Q1.
Oh, no, that's seriously uncool. Seriously uncool. Pennsylvania Q1.
other backward cylinder duplex put on mediocre and average? Why?
That's because that's the only other duplex that anyone gives a crap about, and it's the only other duplex.
Maybe it wasn't quite as problematic, and it at least looked cooler.
But the cylinders are beneath the firebox on that one.
Yeah, but the 6130 has the extra disadvantage of, ironically, being one of those few steam engines that did kind of look like a dildo at first. Because streamlining.
So,
torpedo-style streamlining. So...
Alright, the
yeah,
Q... Alright, what do we say in the chat?
uncool.
Seriously uncool. We're gonna have to go to the complete opposite side for a second, because this is the wall nobody dare enter. This is...
And look at your particularly messy bedroom.
It's the this isn't my bedroom, but...
Yes, it goes. It's seriously uncool with the E2s.
I just
Oh my god. It has been a while.
Also, Andrew, I think that maybe you have to turn up some of our volumes in your stream, because at times when we watch it back on YouTube, we can't hear ourselves through your speakers. Like somehow our volume is a bit on the low side.
Is this better?
Well, I can't check right now because I actually have the stream on YouTube muted. And who has joined? Ooh, the Daniel man has returned.
Hey, the Canadian boy! The Canadian.
I want to fucking hear. I want to fucking hear.
So he's just
Okay, I'm going to recap myself and watch part of the stream back. I'll be back in a minute or so.
Okay. But I think we have agreed that we can put this on the forsaken wall. The
Yeah,
uncool wall.
Always remember, Andrew, function over form.
Yeah, but
Should have put the B&O duplex on uncool at least.
the thing is, we're also judging these based on their looks too. But we're gonna have to unfortunately put this
Right, I have
This.
returned.
right. The funny thing is, since this locomotive is slightly better looking than the bullied, ugh,
Yes, it's going in seriously uncool.
the rolling
Look at that,
toaster.
It at least looks like a steam locomotive.
Yes, we're gonna have to put it just behind the E2, but in front of the.
Yeah, but
Right.
Andrew, I will admit,
Yes.
the way you kind of went up close to the leader, it almost looked like you were kissing that picture. So I think we may have accidentally gotten another meme out of you.
Where, like, I need to see it.
No, like with your mouth. No, don't replicate it. Don't replicate it. No. We're not going to French kiss there.
I just found it. Hang on. I'm gonna post it in the shit chat.
The shit chat. Lovely.
All right. Now let us transition back to the holy wall. If I can.
Very nice.
Which, funny enough, is that we only have 4 locomotives on the uncool wall, and we have this many on the actual cool wall.
John wants to tell you something.
What?
I think Andrew has a sexual addiction with trains. He was kissing the one on the Oh, by the way, we can hear you now on the stream.
Andrew's laughing.
Thanks for turning your phone volume up.
Anyway, though,
I don't know if you're reading the chat, but I said that.
I appear to have lost the locomotive, but oh no, there it is. Okay.
Well, what is this?
All right.
What is this?
Now
What is that?
is our first British locomotive of the. Oh my god!
What is it you are with? You're surprised. Hold on. What is this?
Madman?
This is our first British locomotive of the day. It is an
Show it already.
Oh, the J70.
Yeah.
Yes, the LMER J70, aka the Great Eastern Sea.
Put it on cool. It needs to be on cool. It needs
Also,
to be on cool.
what do you mean? It was the very first British tank engine to feature Wall Street's valve gear.
I'm saying it needs to be on cool, not uncool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's cool.
At least cool.
Yeah, I'd say it's
For
cool.
references aside, fucking Toby.
We don't talk about that. But anyway,
We don't talk about Toby.
let's admire the fact that this locomotive was the very first British tank engine to acquire Wall Street's external valve gear. Even though, you know, it was obscured by a
It
bit
was
of stuff.
covered up by side skirting.
But
And you can at least drive the locomotive from both sides, right?
yeah, you can actually.
No,
That's wait.
I don't think you could.
Or
I don't think you could.
well, anyway, I'm gonna put it right there next to 1309. But we'll put it in cool. It's not the best locomotive, or that's why I'm not putting it in Sub-Zero. But it is a charming little, and plus it had a very unique little addition to railroading history. So let me just cut out the second one. Oh boy.
This is bad.
Oh.
Oh, is it laughable? What is
it's
it?
it's
Is
a
it so funny?
it's embarrassing. It's not bad per se, but it is embarrassing.
Show us.
Okay, well, let me just cut out these edges because these edges are ruining my OCD. Absolutely.
I'm here eating cheese that's watching the stream, keeping an eye on the chat right now.
All right, it is a Duke dog.
Oh, what? The Great Western 3200 class 440s or Duke dogs.
Yes.
I've actually never heard of that.
Oh, no, wait. They were like a combination of the frames of the Duke class 440 on the frame. Yeah, the boiler of a Duke class 440 on the frame of a Bulldog class 440. I'm actually looked at
this to the city of Truro.
No. Different.
Although
different class altogether. Let's see. Yeah, the GWR 3200 class, also known as Earls because they were actually named after Earls to begin with. Okay, they were comprised of Duke class boilers and Bulldog class frames. So yeah, that's why they were called
Duke dogs.
They were built to serve the Cambrian network, but they were hardly much of an upgrade compared to the previous engines.
Especially because, you know, they looked pretty outdated compared to the competition.
Yeah, well, let me put it this way. 30 of them were built between 1936 and 39. And by which time they were indeed very old and admittedly somewhat outdated for their time because, you know, double frames, which was basically like an extinct art at that point. So, I would say average because I don't think there was anything principally wrong with them.
But there was a lot to be desired.
I'll say average too because I really never actually heard of them, so I don't know much about them.
So we'll put it underneath and in front of we'll put it underneath the Santa Fe 210-10-2 and in front of the B&O 4444. All right.
Yeah.
And
then, also, ironically, I believe they did start out as 3200s, but they were renumbered to 9000s.
Oh, another small engine.
What is this small
Canada or where?
This is our last British one this week.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And then we'll go on to our two Canadian ones and then our nice German boy. But for our last German locomotive today is a Y1.
Oh.
If you don't know, a Y1 is a small little steam. Yes, it is powered by steam, despite looking, you know, boxy. But they were designed to be driven by one person.
Wait, LMER Y1.
Yes.
Oh, the Sentinels.
Yes.
Those were built to replace
The Y7s.
for Northeastern H-class tanks.
Or yes, the Y7s. Or as I like to call them, the real Ivor. But anyway.
Yeah. Cool, I guess. Because they did represent an interesting little.
Just put it at least somewhere next to the J70s.
I'm actually gonna put it right next to. I'm gonna put it next. I'm gonna put it in between this 5600 and the C16 down here. Because it is a nice, adorable locomotive. And although it is kind of, questionable in looks. But it made up for its looks when it comes to its functionality. So, I will put it in cool. Right next to the German Firelist and the C16. Right there. Okay. That was all our British ones. Now let's... Yes, let's... And, finally, I was actually waiting for this locomotive. This is our first Canadian locomotive of the day. And it is none other than the... the G5.
Oh, 1278?
The one in this photo is 1278.
Could you impose a west bordering on Sub-Zero?
Cool bordering on Sub-Zero.
I guess.
Actually, yeah, let's put it right in the vicinity of the LNER P1.
All right, this is a comment from Tyler Green. Could you imagine a Reading T1 dressed as a Western Maryland
Potomac.
Potomac.
Not really. And it would seem that Tyler keeps on his shtick of commenting things that don't really have anything to do with our subjects.
I mean, they're talking about trains, so I mean, at least they're talking about that.
I mean, we're trying to talk about canceled restoration projects.
But right now we haven't gone to that, have we? Right now we're on the cool wall.
Still talking about the cool wall.
So, I'm gonna put it in the
vicinity. As I was trying to say earlier, I guess the G5s had kudos for having all of their survivors operate at least once in the preservation era.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty cool feat.
So a third case of that.
Yeah, especially because it's a kind of resemblance with the Manors, the Great Western Manors. Is that right? And of course, the Reading T1s, of course, and
the Rio Grande K36s.
All right, but I've put 1278 on the verge of cool and in the middle of Sub-Zero. So that is right there. Respect Canada. I almost called you Canadia. Canadia.
That's what my brother and friends call it.
Really, Canadia?
Yeah. They literally call it Canadia.
Why?
I don't know. I guess it's a fun word to say, though. Guaranteed. That's guaranteed.
Oh my goodness! I love this lot. I love our last Canadian locomotive of the day, and it is.
What is it?
What is it?
2860.
And demands that to be put in Sub-Zero. Probably.
At least the same area. Cool and Sub-Zero.
I'm gonna put it in front. I'm gonna put it in front of the nickel plate Hudson because,
I mean, at least two of them have operating preservation, especially the one for the Southern Railway.
Yeah, 2839. Hella underrated, by the way.
And 2060 is also one of those team stores that were so good, sadly in poor mechanical shape nowadays.
All right, but I will put that right next to the nickel plate Hudson because. Anyway, but oh my! We are on our final locomotive of the day, and oh my God!
Is it a German lad?
Yes, it is. Of course, it is the German lad that I promised. But Oh my god.
What is it?
I'm gonna
What
make sure.
is it?
All right.
Show it to me. Baureihe 10! The Baureihe 10, the biggest, those rare no-bow Pacifics from the Deutsche Bundesbahn. Just 2 of them were built. They're basically like semi-streamlined 0-110s on steroids.
And
they worked fairly well. I'd say put them in cool.
fairly well. So I guess we'll just put in cool. Let me just
Yeah.
get
Like, I think ironically their tenders were a bit of
a hassle.
were a bit irritating to work with, I suppose.
All right, so I'll put this one in front of the hush hush because the hush hush needs to hush.
I'll be right back.
All right, but there we go. That was our segment of the cool wall today. But holy crap, the cool wall is getting pretty full.
Might want additional room then, at least at the bottom.
Oh wait, I forgot. I made this extra extension. So that will be okay. Well, now
Restorations.
let's get to the matter at hand. All right. Anyway.
Also got a fiddle around
Okay,
here. Well,
so
I guess
which ones did we talk?
I'll be the opener because
Yes.
I got
You start with a good one. Start us off.
yes. Basically, it's a locomotive that I have a Gmod model out right now, as I'm trying to actually perfect the valve here a little bit. So it's going a bit difficult. Fucking hell. But yeah, I can start us off with a with a German locomotive. Imagine that, ending the cool wall with a German locomotive and starting the stream with a German locomotive. The engine in question that I have planned, that I wanted to talk about, is a 210 decapod from the Baureihe 50. The Class 50 was conceived rather suspiciously in the spring of 1939. It was a pretty lightweight 2-cylinder 210 decapod. I'll chuck a picture up here in this channel of the Gmod model in question. And basically, the thing about the 50s, they were constructed to be powerful but reasonably light-footed. So they had an axle loading of about 15 metric tons, so they could go in a lot of secondary routes as a result of that. And yeah, between 1939 and 1948, 3,164 of these damn things were built. In terms of tractive effort, let me actually quickly look up the stats again. But I do know most of it out of the top of my head. I just need a wee bit of extra confirmation. They had two 600 by 660 millimeter cylinders, which equals 23.62 by 25.98 inches. Boiler pressure was 16 bar, or 232.1 psi. And when you combine that with 1,400 millimeter diameter driving wheels, which equals 55.1 inches, you'd be looking at 51,897 pounds of tractive effort. So yeah, powerful but lightweight, and also light-footed. And yes, the 50-12-55 that I showed, that's the particular engine that I wanted to talk about. It was let me also quickly look up its resume here on a German website called Dampflokomotivarchiv.de, so Steam Locomotive Archive. Let's see, DRG standard locomotives, Baureihe 50, delivery. Let me find the particular batch that I need to have. There we go. First in this particular batch, that's cool. Okay, it was, okay, there's not a whole lot known about it, but it was retired, I believe. Yeah, it was retired in February of 1977, and in September of the same year, it was transferred. It was bought by by the steam museum that I live close to in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands. It was the third steam engine they got, and they actually tried to restore it several times, but unfortunately, other projects that had a higher priority kept coming up. So as a result, every time they made some progress, they had to stop until ultimately they decided to just use this poor engine as a parts donor, which was actually quite unfortunate given the fact that it was, I believe it's one of remarkably few Baureihe 50 locomotives to be preserved with the original design of boiler, like the original quadruple dome boiler, as I like to call it. So you had your steam dome, your two sand domes surrounding the steam dome, and then in front of the first steam dome, you had a feed water dome, which is where the preheated water enters the boiler, as opposed to the steam dome where the steam leaves the boiler towards the cylinders. No. But yeah, unfortunately, nowadays the engine is basically sitting in conserved scrapyard condition in the carriage shed at the museum that I'm referring to, the SSN. I'm not going through the meaning of that again, but you probably know what I mean. But yeah, it's very unlikely that it's ever going to be rebuilt to operational condition, because while some of the museum volunteers would love to, like the higher board of directors, not really, with the main argument for it being the fact that it wouldn't be a very good locomotive to serve them, given its relatively low top speed of 80 kilometers or 50 miles per hour. And seeing how the SSN doesn't have their own individual tourist railroad, and they predominantly do steam excursions and rail tours on the main line, you want a locomotive that is comfortable at running at higher speeds than that, so it can flow decently with regularly scheduled passenger and freight trains. Whereas this, unfortunately, would barely be able to do 50 happily, and it would be kind of struggling, and unfortunately, it would also be pretty good at blocking the main line, sadly. So, yeah, that's one canceled restoration of a German lad preserved in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Well, Josh,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you talked about it last time, but would you like to talk about the canceled restoration of the Albert?
Yes, I can, but I gotta get the file pulled up. I was pulling it up and I forgot to.
All right, well then, I
Yeah.
guess while he's
Also, Josh, we had this weird Russian guy, I believe, who commented something, VUN.rent.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I'm just going to have that comment removed.
Yeah. I guess what I wanted to try to say,
I'm gonna get rid of
while we wait, I'm just going to give a bit of recap of what we talked about last time in case for some reason people didn't watch the last Cancer Restoration stream.
Well, it's been
That's
a while.
okay.
Alright. So
Last time we talked about LSM 919 and 20, SP 5021, Bessemer Lake Erie 643, NW 1218 for its 1996 debut, Pennsylvania 1223 and 7002, heavy quotes in the latter, Santa Fe 5000, Southern Railway 385 for some points in time, Reading 2101 in Conrail colors, and it all ended when I talked about Santa Fe 3759. Now before Andrew became the onslaught hero of the humor department just by eating an unpeeled banana.
Oh, God.
We
By
don't.
the way, that's the part that I missed, right? After
Yeah,
Risa brought a friend in who explained something about his project on refurbishing a British EMU.
Hey, Andrew, since I've not talked about a steam locomotive before, it's still quite new to me. So, what do I just talk about the whole history, or do I
just talk about the history if you can, and try and do it quickly because we only have about an hour left.
All right, don't worry. I'll go over the important stuff. So, Albert was doomed from the start, essentially, because they ended up making the smoke box onto the frame of the locomotive, and it ran to haul sugarcane from Martinsville, Louisiana. And eventually they about scrapped the locomotive. However, it was saved from it and taken care of. And then over time, Cedar Point ended up getting their hands on it. And in 2003, they threw a new cab onto it and did some running gear work. However, they put the locomotive off on a siding because they didn't have the time to work on it. And also, when they went over the things, they said, hey, we can fix the problem. We just have to cut the firebox off the frame. But when they looked at it, the firebox had already been cut. And after a little bit of research, they figured out that they would have to rebuild the engine from the wheels up. And that's about a $3 million restoration.
For a tiny little narrow gauge 260?
Yep.
That,
yeah, it's a 260.
Jeez.
that's how much 2926 is worth in her current condition.
But, so, Albert is definitely a canceled restoration, right?
Yes.
Well,
They tried to rebuild it, but it's canceled?
They do have hints that they might actually do a rebuild of the locomotive.
But for now, it's basically canceled. So
Yes.
it still qualifies for this subject. All right,
Yeah.
just checking because, once again, this is about locomotives that had a canceled rebuild, like that
Yes.
Class 50 engine I just mentioned. They tried to rebuild it several times, but other higher priority projects kept coming along that better served their needs and interests. So it became a parts donor.
Another thing you got to consider is they have about 7, I think, other locomotives that they run. Albert was moved off onto display when they found out just how much work she would need when fixing her up. So,
also, there's actually something that I actually forgot to mention about that Class 50 locomotive. At some point in its life, with the Deutsche Bundesbahn, because after the war it did end up in West Germany, so it got to serve the Deutsche Bundesbahn. The DB gave the locomotive a special tender with like a built-in doghouse, not like a tiny shelter on top of the water tank, but more so something that's integrated into the water tank. But of course, that would limit water capacity and a bit of fuel capacity. So when the SSN got the locomotive, they actually requested that a normal version of the same tender would be brought with it. So they got that in the form of the so-called T26 tender. I don't know the number 26 referring to the fact that it holds 26 cubic meters of water, which equals 26,000 liters. You may knock yourself out with the math to calculate it into U.S. gallons, if you so please. I don't know the water capacity on the cabin tender, as it's called. But here's the tragedy. Because this locomotive's rebuild was canceled, the tender was also just kind of left to the elements. And the unfortunate part is, the upper body of that tender is already scrapped. The fuel bunker and water tank, it's scrapped. So only the frame, bogies, and wheels are left. And honestly, it's actually looking so bad that I don't think those are going to last very long either. So that new tender that they got, that might be scrapped altogether fairly soon sometime. I don't know for certain, but once again, even if the SSN is ever going to try to rebuild it, which seems unlikely, they might as well have to ask somebody to build a brand new T26 tender to go along with the engine.
Oh,
Damn it.
But
Excuse me.
But look at it this way. At least it's the tender that's too far gone, not the locomotive itself. Be happy about that.
I mean,
Yeah,
557's
just that
original
47.
tender was cut up, and that thing's gotten a brand new S160 tender. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. In fact, here's also a picture of how I basically remember seeing the locomotive. Spoiler alert, it's not pretty. This is it before it was actually moved into the carriage shed, before it was even built. Oh, there's even a steam crane there, which was sadly scrapped because they needed to get rid of it and they couldn't find an owner. And here's actually a somewhat more recent picture because it's in the carriage shed. But look at this. The engine has German smoke deflectors added to it. I never saw the engine with smoke deflectors, so that is, somewhat more recent. So I don't know exactly when this happened. But yeah, it's weird. Sorry that I had to come back to this engine.
Wait! How about we talk about Lion?
Wait, Lion was a canceled restoration?
Well, I guess, as time goes on, it's becoming less and less likely for that thing to ever be rebuilt. Lion, I believe, is either an, hold on, I gotta look
It's an
this up.
042.
I was about to say it's either an old, it's an 042 or a 240. Some people may know her better as Thunderbolt from the 1951 movie.
The Tit-Built Thunderbolt.
Studios. But yeah, apparently in that movie, it actually got a minor collision, which actually gave the engine some pretty distinctive damage. And some people who don't want to tarnish the locomotive's originality insisted that the engine wouldn't be rebuilt.
And, I mean, I can see why. I can understand it, but it is disappointing.
Yeah.
It's like...
Also, out of curiosity, did we also ever talk about the unfortunately infamous saga that was Kansas City Southern 503?
That's a canceled restoration?
503?
Yes.
I don't think I've ever heard of that.
Kansas City Southern 503.
I'm going to have to look that up.
Locomotive that actually belonged to the Louisiana and Arkansas Railroad. In February of 2018, it was actually facing the real danger of being broken up for scrap because the city where it was on display, Port Arthur, Texas, I think some city officials discovered that the locomotive was leaking asbestos.
Oh boy.
And they had to get rid of the locomotive to clean up the area. The city council tried to sell the locomotive back to the Kansas City Southern, which I believe technically that shouldn't be really possible because it's absorbed into the Union Pacific. But
no, Kansas City Southern is being absorbed to the Canadian Pacific right now.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm sorry, I briefly forgot, but I thought of one of the UP Heritage units that was done in their color scheme, but whatever. Point is, the 503 was in danger of being scrapped, but steam enthusiasts Jason Sapchinsky and Nick Hovey got together and actually set out to try and buy the locomotive, and they put a plan for it to ensure that the locomotive would have a safe and operational future, and they almost succeeded. They raised all the money necessary to save the engine from being scrapped, because fortunately the scrapping was actually delayed by a few days, but they managed to save it. But unfortunately, those plans of giving the engine a new home were canceled, courtesy of one man from the city council, John Beard Jr., who stepped in and basically denied Jason and Nick the opportunity to take the locomotive away because Mr. Beard said that this is our train. It's part of our history. Correction, it isn't part of our history because apparently the locomotive never even operated near the town of Port Arthur in service. And if you really cared about this engine, why didn't you
step in to save it from being cut up?
Yeah, why didn't you look after it more for the past 60 years or so when the damn thing was on display?
You bastards!
Build a little shelter around it, keep it in good cosmetic condition, maybe even, remove the boiler jacketing and carefully remove the asbestos lagging in between. But nope, you just left it there to rust. And now the biggest tragedy is that the engine is denied an operational future, and it's actually still in the city of Port Arthur. Honestly, I hate to say it, but at the cost of 503, I hope the locomotive actually falls apart so that Mr. Beard learns a painful lesson. I don't like saying it, but I feel like I have to. 503 is a lost cause.
And it's not even the locomotive's fault. It's because people are stupid and don't understand exactly how.
It's basically because of a local politician who is misguided and uneducated when it comes to the history of that engine.
It's sad. It's disappointing.
Yeah,
It's disappointing.
He looked at Jason and Nick and he said, "What are we gonna do? Let these outsiders take our train?" Yes, that's exactly what you should have done.
My God, those people are real.
This is why I'm not involved with politics.
Yeah, and tragically, Mr. Beard managed to persuade the rest of the city council.
I hate politics.
So that's the saddest part. So you had a decent little 10-wheeler that could have had an operational future, and it's gone. You fucking kind of snapped it away.
Oh, wait.
Ooh.
How about we talk about the canceled?
I think I know what to talk about next.
Oh, okay.
There's a shit ton of canceled restorations over at the Mid-Continent Railway Museum in North Freedom, Wisconsin. Oh my God, where to begin? Jim, would you like to talk about UP 440?
Oh yeah. Hold on, I do need to look up. I do need to look up that page again. Let me just park my engine. Yes, I'm driving in Gary's mod. Don't blame me. Let's see. UP 440. Gotta look up here. Okay, there we go. Found the story. Also, let me do a quick whiz to the chat. Okay, nothing too out of the ordinary. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so Union Pacific number 440. Apparently, I'll keep the history of the locomotive brief, but apparently at some point it was initially built as a compound locomotive numbered 1660. So much like Southern Pacific 2914, it got at least one big rebuild that turned it into a simple locomotive and probably a reclassification. But yeah, after it was retired from the Union Pacific Railroad, it let's see, when was it retired? Okay, in 1955 it was retired, and it was initially donated to the Nebraska State Fair Association and put on display at the fairgrounds in Lincoln, Nebraska. But yeah, after a failed move somewhere else, the engine went to the Mid-Continent Railway Society as a donation. And it arrived in North Freedom, Wisconsin in June of 1975. They tried to fix it up, but let me read this paragraph here. The locomotive's boiler was evaluated and determined to be restorable. Not long before number 440 was retired by the UP, she had received new firebox sheets. Other components of the boiler appeared in good condition, and in the mid-1980s, funding was raised to begin replacing some 800 flexible stables, sleeves, and caps. Most have severely corroded during 440's display years, and new techniques had to be devised to remove the remains of the existing caps and sleeves, and the manufacturing of new ones from new materials that met today's more stringent FRA and ASME boiler codes had to be, they had to be created or whatever. However, by 1989, work was suspended due to a lack of funding, and the engine was stored, awaiting the day that she could return to the shop for further repairs. But unfortunately, in 2004, the locomotive was traded by the Mid-Continent Railway Museum in return for copper range number 29, a locomotive that better fit the upper Midwest focus of the museum and matched two restored copper range passenger carriages that they already had in their collection to form a complete train. Plans by Trans-Northern to restore number 440 to operation and lease it to a third party failed to happen, sadly. And the locomotive was instead sold to the Langlade County Historical Society for display in Antigo, Wisconsin. And the engine arrived there on Halloween, so October 31st of 2005. So unfortunately, that's an engine that won't turn a wheel under its own steam again, probably ever, sadly. But the good news, it's still around, and it did got cosmetic repairs, including the construction of a new cab, which is at least quite refreshing. And ironically, even though it didn't, even though it wasn't owned as such, the locomotive is actually repainted in a livery of the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad, because the city of Antigo has a closer association with the Chicago and Northwestern than it did with the Union Pacific, even though the CNW was absorbed by the Union Pacific. So yeah, Andrew, get off your tablet.
I'm looking. I started getting curious about restorations, specifically Boston and Maine 3713. So I decided to look up any news on it, and I found this.
Do not put that on here. We hope that's not getting canceled.
It's not getting canceled, but I did get curious about what the updates are for it, and from what I can see here, she's her drivers have been finished. The tender frame is close to being completed. Her cab is basically finished. And I quote, whether more fundraising will be required for the restoration or locomotive's upkeep is yet to be decided. So there.
Okay. Also, drivers? You mean to tell me that they already finished the engine drivers?
Mm-hmm.
Language barrier joke. I know you mean driving wheels, but then just say driving wheels, because I rarely use the term drivers for the driving wheels.
Yeah, but you understood what I meant.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just messing with you because of the easy British English versus American English jokes.
And
also, here's a couple of pictures in the undisclosed burning subjects chat of number 440 in her new-ish Chicago and Northwestern livery.
Nice.
Weirdly though, with gray cylinders. But
maybe it's primer. Maybe it's primer.
It's not looking too bad. So, yeah. And let's see. Dan is furiously typing something here in the Discord chat. He said, "Come makes me fierce."
Hey, there's this guy in the chat. I'm thinking about. I'm gonna have to this.
Hold on. What is he doing?
You'll see.
Can I say something now?
Sure.
Yeah, there's a couple more cancel restorations I would like to talk about.
If it's Tyler Green, he's fine. He's a viewer. He's a casual.
Andrew, look 3 up from the last comment, and then look at the 2 in between Brandon's comment.
You mean the Russian guy? I already got rid of him. I don't see anything.
Oh, I still see them.
Yeah. Anyway, though, Tyler actually brought up a pretty interesting point. Has there been any updates about Louisville and Nashville 152's restoration? I'm gonna find that out. But continuing, Ryan, do you have a canceled restoration you would like to talk about?
Yeah, quite a few. Let's see, we have Louisiana Cypress number 2, which is a 260 built by Lima in 1906. It was planned to be restored in the early 1970s, but those plans never fell through. Actually, it was originally used to hold passenger excursions or tourist trains for the Mid-Continent Railway Museum. But after it broke down, it was undergoing an overhaul. But in fact, by the turn of the 21st century, it was already in pieces. So it was sold off to a private owner in 2015. And another one, Alabama, Tennessee, and Northern Decapod, number 401, SC1, built by Baldwin, 1928. Yes, you heard me right. It's called an SC1.
You got a picture?
Here.
Oh.
Let me see if
Who's farting?
But I guess while you look for the picture, you can continue your story about this engine.
Yeah. It was planned to be restored during the 1980s or 1990s, if I remember correctly. But instead, it sat outside in the elements in North Freedom for several years. So, he almost had another decapod operating in the preservation era. So, no, it didn't save any other locomotive from a roundhouse fire. No, it can't pull it anywhere near as many cars as 1630 can, but
Yeah,
it had potential enough.
Yeah, side note, 1630 is
Chad.
Chad.
In operation in the States. Yeah. Let me put it that way, because here in Europe, oh boy, 44s, 50s, and 52s aplenty in the Netherlands and Germany. And maybe even a 58 in Germany. But, yeah. Also, Tyler, I don't think there have been any recent updates on UP 428 in terms of its rebuild.
Well, I'm going to find out about that because...
Yeah. But the locomotive was also sold in 2015 to the Age of Steam Roundhouse.
That means we're going to see it, Andrew.
Wait, what locomotive? Which?
What?
Which locomotive?
I mean, I was continuing the story of Alabama, Tennessee, and Northern 401.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Alabama?
Yeah.
Sweet home Alabama!
Tennessee and Southern.
Andrew and I are both going to see this locomotive.
Sunday.
Yeah, Alabama, Tennessee, and Northern 401. Now the Age of Steam Roundhouse have been repainted as its original identity, that is. But now
that engine! Yeah. Oh, that's looking pretty slick, actually.
Yeah. So now it seems pretty likely they'll turn the wheel under its own power in the preservation era now.
I mean,
but yeah,
Age of Steam. I love them. I love them.
And I've seen an older picture.
I love them so much. I love the Age of Steam Roundhouse so much. Oh my god.
Oh god, Andrew's whipping out the Donald Trump voice.
Oh my god.
Let's see, Tyler. He's asking if Burlington route number 3007 will run again. Given how it's at the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, which I believe is kind of like chaotic neutral of train museums in the United States, I doubt it actually, because their collection is vast, and I don't think they even have. I don't think they have quite enough people to keep it at least in decent cosmetic shape at the moment.
Hold on, I'm gonna find out what. Oh, a Hudson.
Yeah.
Wait a sec. We have one of these on the cool wall.
Would you like to talk about the locomotive that's on our thumbnail?
Yes, New York Central 3001. Oh,
yes.
I have prejudice towards the other survivor, 2933, because of the slightly better looks. But yeah, 3001 is a great candidate for canceled restorations. Not because the engine looks a little bit ugly, in my opinion, but because the engine is apparently in such horrible mechanical shape.
It scared away the Fort Wayne.
It actually managed to scare away the very talented people of the Fort Wayne Railroad Historical Society.
The people who...
the madmen who have rebuilt Nickel Plate Road 765.
And are currently in the midst of taking care of one of only 2 Wabash steam locomotives left in the world. 534.
Yeah, little 534.
And by the way, side note.
May I remind you guys that North Star Rail also looked at it?
They were also scared away, weren't they?
The condition was bad.
Here's the hope that 2933 is actually in somewhat better mechanical restoration.
Oh my gosh, this is terrifying.
They're in
Andrew.
What?
I'm working on my little 440 that I purchased recently, and I'm painting the running board right now. I just got one glare at the engine, and look in undisclosed BS. That is cursed.
It is looking very cursed.
Cursed 040.
Also, another pretty good cancel restoration. Speaking of 765, can we get at least a few F's in the chat for a slightly older sister engine, 763?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm posting.
You'll get to see that thing too, and at least it's looking better at the Age of Steam Roundhouse. But I believe that, for a time it was actually at the Virginia Museum of Transportation in Roanoke, Virginia. Then Jerry Joe Jacobson, I believe, bought the locomotive with the intention of having it rebuilt to operate on his Ohio Central short line railroad, right? Because it's not a tourist railroad. It was intended to be like a short line, so even a bit of revenue freight working.
Yes.
In addition to any potential passenger trains.
Yes.
Okay. But then, of course, those rebuild plans were canceled when Jerry decided to sell the Ohio Central Railroad so he could
Build his roundhouse.
Build the Age of Steam Roundhouse in Sugar Creek, Ohio.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
is Sugar Creek, Ohio.
Yeah. So that's quite tragic. He
But-
only had a third nickel plate Berkshire in operation.
Nearly.
Yes, sir. Because long before 765,
We had 759, which actually,
759.
now I think about it.
Technically, that's also a bit of a canceled restoration. Following its period of storage in the 1970s on the Delaware and Hudson Railroad.
Yeah, it was originally going to run more, but
New York.
it was gonna,
After its last run, the people that operated her, or whoever was storing her, those people didn't drain the boiler of the locomotive, so the water that was left in there froze overnight and caused all sorts of lovely internal damage.
and thanks a lot, DNH!
Although Steamtown meant the engine was later acquired by, reacquired by Steamtown, or I think, Steamtown have always owned it in preservation. Ross just kind of leased it. Yes, Ross Rowland. Yeah, he actually got a bit of a bad reputation recently.
Yeah, to say the least.
Further and further from grace. But the thing is, Steamtown did actually do some repairs on the locomotive, and they test fired the engine several times, but I believe after a flue failure, they decided, you know what, we're not bothering. And so ever since then, the 759 has kind of become a bit of a shell of its former self.
Yeah.
It's
And the
really
need
sad.
to rebuild it has been largely diminished because of 765 operating and 1225 operating, and soon 2716 operating as well.
The glorious CNO Canal returns.
But also, Jim, you forgot to mention what 763 was looked at by Ross.
Oh yeah, the American Freedom Train, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. I almost forgot 763 was almost a part of the American Freedom Train.
Yeah, along with 755, if I'm not mistaken.
And along with 611. The Rolling Dildo. Anyway.
But
What about a rolling?
anyway, there's another cancel restoration involving a certain 284.
Ooh. What is it? Wait! Let me guess. Is it 2789?
2700.
Wait, what?
Oh yeah. Wasn't that going to be bought for the Age of Steam Roundhouse 2 at some point?
No, the Fort Wayne Group.
Oh.
What?
But the engine was vandalized quite badly when it was on display somewhere. Then it made its way to Denison, Ohio.
Ooh.
It was kind of stripped there as a safety precaution. But yeah, the engine did look pretty miserable for a long time.
I think I have to put up that discussion of 2700 again to refresh your memory a little bit.
Yes, so sorry if I got things wrong again. But at least be happy that the engine got a decent cosmetic restoration sometime, several years ago.
Yes, she looks a lot better now.
Okay, here's the
Not
discussion.
perfect, mind you, but
A lot
she
better.
is decently recognizable as a steam engine.
and she looks shiny somewhat.
Hey, I finished my running board repaint.
Oh yeah, here I found a particular post on that forum again.
Oh.
Oh,
Andrew,
What?
look at this. I finished the running board repaint.
Nice. Hello?
It looks so much better now.
It's funny what a little bit of paint can do. But in the meantime, I'm actually kind of guys.
Yes.
We need to talk about 222.
You mean 222 or 202?
222.
I don't think I've heard of that one.
You guys haven't. And do you know why? It was fucking cut up. But it has 2 surviving sisters. One of them is next to a certain underwhelming 280.
You have to specify what railroad it's from.
Esmer and Lake Erie.
Oh, wait. Esmer Lake Erie 222?
Yes, I found out recently that 222 hauled a farewell to steam excursion. And do you know what that means?
It's going to go on the cool wall.
Well, maybe
It was,
actually.
retired steam star, technically.
Yeah, and it's also the only Yellowstone to ever operate in preservation or operate in excursion.
wait, hold on. What did I miss?
Well, I just remembered that Lakes.
You mean one of the Duluth, Mesabi, and Iron Range Yellowstones?
Yes, one of those Yellowstones, 222, operated in excursion, making it the only 2884 locomotive to ever operate in excursion.
This doesn't qualify as gas restoration, does it?
No, it doesn't. But I thought I would mention it because even 1218 had a sister locomotive that operated a excursion.
Oh, by the way, Andrew, did you block that he guy?
Yes. Anyway, but
Good, so he'll never bother us again.
yes, let's continue.
Yeah, sorry for being absent for a little bit. It's because apparently my mom showed me that apparently there were a bunch of guys working on an apartment building. Like there were a bunch of firefighters working on an apartment building to secure a big metal plate that actually come somewhat loose from the hard winds outside. But yeah, I did find a particular post in question of that forum about 2700. There were several factors in the 2700 not being restored. I'm quoting this. All the loose parts were taken to the cassette shop near New Haven, Indiana, but the 2700 was not moved from Canton. It was not really money, but more that it was going to be so much work. It was stripped down completely, including lots of brackets and such that didn't need to be removed for an overhaul.
Whoa.
Yet there was the 3-way ownership issue that hadn't been resolved. As time moved along, operating and insurance difficulties became extreme as the 765 came due for overhaul in 1993, and then in 1994 came the opportunity to lease the 2716, which made sense as long as we could get boiler tube extensions under the old FRA rules. After the Gettysburg boiler explosion, that put an end to many tube extensions by the FRA as a safety measure, and an end to the 2716. But yeah, so rebuilding 2700 was going to be a whole lot of work.
A little bit too much work.
Apparently.
Well, that's sad. Anyway.
And it's just like,
We're also going to talk about a certain other Union Pacific steam engine, Jim.
Yeah, 1243. An old, hold on one. Oh yeah, but 1243, that's a little old 10-wheeler that the UP Steam team actually tried to rebuild at one point, but they discovered that that's similar to the 759. Its boiler was filled with water, and they after its last run, and they didn't drain the boiler as such. So, yeah, it froze overnight and caused all sorts of damage. I'm starting to sense a slight pattern here. But, yeah, as the Constellation Prize, what the UP Steam team did back then, and this was, I believe, in the late 1980s or early 1990s, so it was definitely during the Steve Lee era. Instead of having the engine rebuilt, which they probably could have done, I say somewhat worryingly, instead of rebuilding it, they actually decided to build a specialized flat car for it to cart it around on some trips,
I have a question.
including Rail Fair 91, I believe.
I have a question. What is it? Hey, Jim.
What?
Could they have been putting water in those boilers as their way to decommission them, like how they would take engines and put holes in the blocks? They take them and fill them up with water, and then they freeze them overnight, and then it cracks the boiler up.
No. Water freezing overnight is a result of a little bit of ignorance and not forgetting to drain the boiler of the water.
I
That they
see.
forgot to let the water out.
I see. Well, the way that you were talking, it almost sounded like it was on purpose as a way to decommission it.
It wasn't. If you're going to do it on purpose, you got to do it really nasty by filling either the boiler itself or the firebox with concrete.
Don't remind me. They filled Mallard's firebox with concrete.
So is there a way they could put antifreeze in those boilers, or would that affect them in a way?
I'm not sure.
Actually, that's a good question.
Because I was thinking about that when you were talking about that. I thought, why don't they put antifreeze in those like they do in car engines and radiators?
I'm gonna have to ask Dr. Mike because, or I'm gonna have to ask one of the guys at the 2926 because they could probably answer why. Because a lot of them have a lot of experience on these things, like a lot more. Like,
I almost wonder if it would have something to do with causing trouble with the environment.
or maybe it would cause steaming issues. I wonder.
I don't know. That definitely would be something to ask, though.
That is an actually good question, surprisingly. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask that.
Let me know what they tell you. I'm curious.
Okay, I will. I guess I will. But
that way you can.
Otherwise, I guess. I mean, it's not wise to keep the boiler filled with water anyway.
You wouldn't,
because you could cause all sorts of rust.
yes, that is a point too.
So what they what they did at the SSN museum near my house one time, like at the end of when they you remember that Class 65 tank engine they have, right, Andrew? That's still under their ownership.
You mean the?
Yeah, the 65018. When they, I believe at the end of 2018 or something, when it didn't have any operational future for them anymore, I believe what they did was they, instead of, they did drain the boiler, and if there was still like tiny drips of water left, what they did is they would actually light a very small fire with like just a little bit of wood to, just boil that little bit of water away, because seeing how it's just a small fire, it wouldn't hurt the locomotive that much. Like no major cause of metal fatigue. It's not like you're throwing a huge pile of coal. No, it's just a little bit of wood that's used as the fuel.
It's not like you're doing enough to blow it up. I mean, what?
No, far from it. It's just, a little bit of, just a little bit of heat to, have the locomotive as dry as possible to further preserve the metal.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay. I think there's another cancel restoration that comes to mind. Certain Pacific type.
Is it 290?
Oh yes, that one.
Yes, one of two preserved Western Maryland steam engines, and I believe I actually talked about this engine with Ryan, I believe, before the stream. The Western Maryland Scenic Railroad wanted to buy the locomotive to, further live up to their new name, is like this new incarnation of the Western Maryland. But the engine was it was on display somewhere where it still resides today because
Hagerstown, Maryland.
Yeah, that Hagerstown, Maryland. I believe the people in the city council there, they don't want to give the locomotive up. And even then, even if they did want to, I think that the engine would actually be kind of struggling on the WMSR or the Waterbury, however you want to call it, Western Maryland.
For those who don't know,
because basically it's just a Pacific type locomotive, and they need something that's a bit more powerful and sure-footed.
Yeah, especially because for those who don't know, the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad, before it was known as that, it was known as the Allegheny Central Railroad, and it was and those excursions, when it was called that, were hauled by two Canadian Pacific G5s, which not very good at doing it on probably one of the steepest grades in America, but that's why we have more powerful locomotives up there. I mean, we had 734, which, I mean, we've talked about that one.
It was sadly somewhat botched, and now it's blocked.
But
I think there's still a tiny chance that it might be properly rebuilt in the future.
But now we have the ultimate. We have the ultimate Baldwin machine.
Okay, hold your horses there, buddy.
Machine.
In fact, I'm tearing this completely apart. Just paint the cab.
I'm just like machine. Reminds me of how Jeremy Clarkson did machine.
Wait, okay, here's another one. Last time, do any of you guys remember talking about Lockomotive 565 last time?
No, I'm just
565?
Yeah, the Locomotive Steamboat.
But making that face, or else people are going to edit a picture of you sitting on a shitter making that face.
No, I can.
I need to do it. I'm going to do it. That's the first thing I thought about when I saw that face. What face? Screenshot it and send it to me.
That's why I'm actually making these faces, because machine.
Hang on, Andrew. I'm getting it again so that Josh can screenshot it. Is it this face?
I use machine. Also,
Machine.
You could use.
Also,
right now,
just to make you know, what makes a really good person is the ability to put yourself down. We don't need cyberbullies for that.
Okay.
Got it? Lol.
Yes, I mean.
Do any of you guys know what? Did any of you guys talk about Locomotive 565?
No, because I've never heard of that locomotive.
I guess I'll talk about it myself.
Yes! Do it! No!
Just do it.
Do it.
565 is one of only two surviving Delaware Locomotive Western or Lackawanna steam locomotives preserved, built by Alco in 1908. I mean, and was considered for restoration at the Morris County Central Railroad in New Jersey, but those plans never fell through. Eventually, at some point, I believe, let me see.
260 Mogul.
Yes.
Wait. It's at Steamtown, isn't it?
Yes.
Why do I suddenly believe that a certain man by the name of Leonard Shaner?
Okay, do you want to talk about this locomotive?
Is this the engine that he had somewhat sabotaged because he's a dumbass?
Yes.
Fucking hell.
Steamtown wanted to restore 565 because it's an authentic Lackawanna steam locomotive, but Shaner fucked it up.
You mean Steamtown wanted to restore it?
Yes.
And Shaner fucked it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just so you know, this is why sane people wouldn't want to be friends with him.
And this is why most of us don't like Steamtown.
Oh my gosh, I literally ripped this whole apart.
No, Andrew. Steamtown is effectively somewhat of an innocent victim here. It's all the fault of one man in this case.
Who?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Say it again.
Shaner.
Say it again.
Leonard Shaner.
Leonard.
He's an idiot.
Leonard.
Yeah, trust me. He's actually quite a notorious steam enthusiast who, thanks to rather rude behavior and trespassing, actually got banned from several different tourist railroads and railroad museums. To the point where he caught the attention of a rather notorious website called the Kiwi Farms, which is a bunch of cyberbullies just making fun of people.
Is his name Leonard Shaner? Like Shane.
Leonard Shaner.
Okay. I'm gonna look him up.
You don't want to look him up, dude.
Or
You don't want to.
Too late. I already did, and it's on the what the. He's a foamer.
Yeah.
What is a foamer? I've never actually been told.
Foamer is basically a derogatory term, or kind of like an insulting words to describe train enthusiasts who are also particularly obnoxious.
To put it bluntly, like imagine a train enthusiast who thinks that they know literally everything and that they can restore every single locomotive in existence.
Oh, so definitely not me then.
No. Also, I'm sorry that I have to share a picture of him. At least I'm keeping it relatively tame because there's also a bunch of insulting fan art of him. But yeah,
Let's
like a trustworthy guy.
move on.
He
looks like a stoner. He looks like he's always stoned, actually.
He looks like my friend Michael Starcher right after he gets home from eating up the buffet.
Yes.
In fact, there's actually a video of him getting kicked off of railroad property. So, yeah.
While he was looking at the 425. My God.
Looks like it. So, yeah, that's, I believe that's a permanent ban from the Reading and Northern.
I think he's an idiot.
Oh, we don't think he's an idiot. We know
Is an idiot. But anyway, though, can we continue?
And a man that any steam enthusiast is best suited to, distance himself from, or herself from.
Yes.
I guess the only saving grace about him is that he probably doesn't know any of us exist.
Yeah.
Good.
But anyway, though, do we have any more canceled restorations in mind, or is that it?
I think I know another one. Here. Actually, Andrew, you know about 1361's plans at Steamtown?
Yes, I do.
Okay, since you haven't talked much in this stream, we want to talk about that part.
Yeah. Okay. To say the least, I think I think we've covered this before. But to put it bluntly, after 1361's bearing failure during 1988, it was sent to Steamtown, where the intentions were that she would be rebuilt to a new condition. But to say the least, they didn't know what they were doing because the governor of Pennsylvania at the time wanted this locomotive to be, steam, but he didn't know how to control the project. And so instead of hiring a full-on contractor and a lot of people and all these separate things, he just started throwing money at the 1361 for some reason, just saying, "Fix it!"
Throw
So
$1 bills at it and say, strip it and fix it.
So originally he granted about $600,000, or was it seven? Yeah, it was $700,000 that he first granted to Steamtown to fix the 1361. But then over time he granted another $420,000. Nice number, but even then they just couldn't really do much because they didn't have all the professional stuff that they actually needed to repair this botched, worn out, poor thing. And by the way, Jim, I bet I can change your opinion.
What?
You remember how Sir Nigel Gresley got his inspiration for the A1?
Let me guess. Somewhat tapered boiler design because of the K4s.
Nope, wasn't that. He based his design overall on the K4.
God damn it. Okay, you got me. Fucking hell.
Anyway,
I
well,
hope the money she threw at them wasn't. Hey, Andrew.
yeah.
I hope the money she threw at them wasn't the ones that I threw at her at the club. Sorry.
That sounds. But anyway, though, even with them getting all this money but with little actual control, and not to mention that this thing was worn out. I mean, to put it into comparison, the New York Central ran their Hudsons on relatively flat ground at their design cruising speed. Well, the Pennsylvania didn't give a shit and ran them literally into the ground. Like,
off the cliff.
It feels like that. They ran them hard, like dangerously hard, to the point where it was. They could have broken those locomotives any second. They were pushing them beyond their limits 24/7. So when they had to restore this K4, they had a more than worn out locomotive to restore. And so when you have a more than worn out locomotive that you botch and then, have a failure and then you send to people who you expect have, have a locomotive that's been professionally restored and all they need to do is a little bit of work, only to find out that they have a literal pile of shit, that's pretty bad, especially because of the lack of control that they had over this locomotive, being able to actually be restored. Because, and I quote, every broken pin and bolt had to be replaced with handmade duplicates. And even after, they got all the money to do so, they couldn't because of the lack of control. And so eventually they decided to put it on semi-static display, which if you don't know what that means, it means that they would rebuild the 1361 to the point where the boiler could still be fired and operate at low pressure and move around the property and blow the whistle. But this never happened either, because it was canceled. And so the boiler and rest of the parts were sent all around Pennsylvania. The boiler sent to the EBT, or East Broad Top, and the frame, tender, cab, and other parts like that were sent to the Railroaders Memorial Museum, which, as we know, is currently the home of the poor K4. Which I'm just going to say right now, I'm a very sympathetic person for this thing, because imagine if you were worn out, like if you were worked at speeds of, like, imagine if a human being can barely go 15 miles an hour. Imagine if you were forced to go 30 miles an hour 40 years of your life. And then once you had your retirement, someone wants to take you out of the retirement home, give you new legs, only for those legs to be shit. Then for you have to go to another doctor who they don't have, which they have the money, but they don't have the other, stuff to do it, and only for your legs to be completely taken away from you and have to wheel yourself in a chair for a couple of months or months or even years, and then finally another doctor comes in and says, all right, we've heard about your situation, we can fix you. That's basically the story of this thing.
Too many doctors.
It's too many owners, too many crazy it's intriguing and sad. And not to mention the fact that, this was the locomotive that inspired Sir Nigel Gresley's most famous designs. The A1, the A3, basically. And not to mention, it's the state steam locomotive of Pennsylvania. And not to mention one of the very first steam locomotives to ever be officially scientifically proven to be thermally efficient. So that is interesting. But the fact that, this went through so much.
Went through hell and back.
It's crazy. Yeah.
I wonder if Shane or was part of the reason why this restoration was shit at Steamtown.
Yeah, it wasn't even just, the fact that, hey, they can't do it. It was the fact that they didn't have the people to do it. They had the money and some of the equipment. They didn't have the people to do it. They didn't have a contractor. They didn't have any people who knew what they were doing. And that's really why this went off the hook. If you don't have the right ingredients, then most likely you're just going to come out with sludge.
Yep.
You can't just throw money at things and expect it to do things, because otherwise it'll end up like what happened with 1361. Well,
Unless it's a woman.
That's another story, though. But I think what we can take from canceled restorations is the lessons that these restorations teach us are some of the craziest lessons that you can learn. I mean, 1361, don't throw money at things. Get the right people and remember what you're dealing with. Because if you don't know what you're doing, then ask for help, please. I mean, it's important to ask for help, especially if you don't know what you're doing, then you could probably mess things up. And that's how a lot of these restorations have happened. Out of these botch jobs. I mean, take a look. 1361, while it was a very, 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 very short excursion career with a lot of disappointment, a lot of false promises, it has taught us.
An expert who actually looks down on the shitty work that was done, because Doyle McCormick was in the cab for a bit and he was somewhat involved.
Yeah.
And he didn't like what he saw.
Yeah. To say the least, 1361, while it was an underwhelming and sorry restoration, I think we can say has earned its place on, in history. Because, one, if it wasn't for this locomotive, we probably would still be making even worse botch jobs. I mean,
yeah.
Imagine
if... Andrew, here's something for you in Burning Subjects group chat that we have here.
What is this?
God. What is it?
You're going to love this.
What is this?
I don't know. I think it's
pancakes! Pancakes!
Man, Andrew. You're always the pancake man.
Greetings from the Pancake District.
Yes, that.
Hello.
And I think that on that bombshell, it's actually a decent time to start wrapping things up.
Yes.
Actually, there's one more thing I'd like to talk about if
All right.
we still have time.
Yes, we have about 20 minutes. or 10 minutes,
Okay.
depending on. Yeah, let's just.
Okay, so Chicago and Northwestern 175. No, not 1385. 175. An existing sister engine. It's actually
Rebuild is straight up canceled?
Yeah, it was part of a cancel restoration, and you can tell it's different because it actually has Walshart's valve gear instead of Stevenson's valve gear. In fact, these are photos of it. Right here. It was built by Alco in 1908. It was actually hold significance for being the very last steam locomotive to operate on the railroad before 1957, I believe. Yeah. Farewell to steam excursion, nonetheless. Yeah. So it's technically a retired steam star as well. But then it was sold through multiple private owners throughout the 1960s until it made its way to the Keweenaw Central of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where the aforementioned Copper Range 29 was operating. But they wanted to restore 175 back to operating condition as a backup, but when they ran out of money since the Copper Range got defunct, they instead sold 175 to some storage facility near Calumet, Michigan. It sat there for several years. No, several decades. Not even kidding. So when Copper Range 29 left for North Freedom, as Jim previously mentioned, 175 was left alone with a Northern Pacific tender. And of course, things changed when the Steam Railroading Institute purchased Locomotive in 2017 as a possible running mate to America 1225.
Wait, what?
Steam Railroading Institute wants to rebuild this thing.
Huh.
In fact, if you want more information, here you go.
Well, if that's
really...
really...
It reminds me that I forgot to mention another cancel restoration. Sorry.
Make it quick. Make it quick.
This locomotive is called Mississippi number 76.
Another 280, as if we haven't had a million of those operating.
Oh, yeah, this was 1278's running mate at the Gettysburg before 1278 went kaboom.
Yeah. Supposedly Sloan Cornell's favorite steam locomotive before the Knoxon King came along. Then after the Gettysburg Railroad fell, it was sold to Jerry Jacobson. Probably he wanted to restore it on the Ohio Central Railroad, but then he sold it in 2005 to the Steam Railroading Institute. They spent so much time rebuilding that thing, especially during Rail Fair 2009, Train Festival 2009. We shouldn't go talk about that, but anyway, that restoration was canceled probably in the mid-2010s when, you know what, this probably isn't significant to Michigan history anyway, so when they found 175, they just sold off 76 to some railroad museum in Maryland called the B&O Railroad Museum of Oakland. Not Baltimore, Oakland.
Oakland, Maryland?
Oakland, Maryland.
Huh.
It's now dressed as Baltimore and Ohio 476.
Right.
Well, cancel restorations somewhat in the Steam Railroading Institute's possession.
I think what we can take from canceled restorations is that any locomotive can be restored with the right people and the right knowledge. But if you take things either too far, too over budget, or just lose the point entirely, then you could probably go off and, you're going to lose things. So make sure you know what you're doing, because otherwise you might end up like some of these that we have listed. Especially some of the more forgotten ones. It's sad, to say the least, that, some of these locomotives were so close to being restored and running, but were unfortunately either ruined by politics or by people gaining up or by financial troubles. But I think that we can take the time to honor the people who even actually got close to getting these things running.
Even the ones that still possibly may see a return in the future.
Yes. And then we should also pay homage to those who literally cannot run again. One of those being, of course, Southern Pacific 5021, which I remember, which, as I said earlier in the last one, cracked cylinder. Okay.
Hold on. I saw that there was a deleted comment by one Victoria Goodman. What the fuck?
Yeah, it was something Rush. It was like a weird Ven something. I forgot what it said entirely.
Yeah. Andrew, did you ever take the time to read all of the comments out loud?
Oh, I did not. Which, since we have,
I don't have to.
I mean, I don't have to, but I can. Which, since I have about 4 minutes left, let's I'll take a look. Let's see. Hey guys, let's see. Turn of divided. No, the Q1 is beyond cool. Could you imagine Clinchfield #1 double-headed with Chesapeake and Ohio 377? What's 377?
An old CNO locomotive.
Okay. Tell Jim.
It's an old 10-wheeler, so maybe, but whatever.
Tell Jim I will eventually buy a pack for O-gauge dark green Pullman passenger cars to go along with my O-gauge Pacific Wabash 696.
Josh, I know. Shut up, John.
Tyler, honest reaction? Don't care, mate.
Okay. I joined the chat and Andrew is doing the finger. Okay, hey Andrew, let's see. Andrew, I'm gonna see 2102 as it runs this year. CNO 1309 on National Train Day, Saturday, May 7th, 2022. Southern 4501 at the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum Rail Camp, and BNO 5300 after its cosmetic restoration. You got a lot of plans. That's good. I'm thinking about going to Cripple Creek this summer. But anyway, I really missed your Burning Subjects video. Oh, thank you. Let's see. Could you imagine if yes, we read this one already. Or we read Reading.
We talked about it.
Okay. Let's see. Canada.
Yeah, that's I think that's John.
Canada. Let's see. Do you guys know about the Nickel Plate Road buy war bonds tender from the Age of Steam Roundhouse? What? Buy war bonds tender. I don't know what that is.
Sounds cool though.
I will say it sounds cool. I don't know what it means, but let's see. By the way, Lionel. Let's see. I'm sad that the 18SF 5000 Madam Queen got canceled. I did out with the restoration too.
Oh,
yeah.
I just found out what the buy war bonds tender is, and it's long story to put it simply, it's literally a tender that's painted up as the Dutch flag, red, white, and blue, with Nickel Plate Road in the red section.
Oh.
And buy war bonds in blue on the white section.
Ah, okay.
So this is what it looks like.
Woo!
Oh, that is cool.
That's cool. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it looks like the Dutch flag, so I'm honored. That's actually kind of neat.
Andrew,
That's pretty
better go get a photo in front of that.
We'll do that, especially because me and Josh are planning on going to the Age of Steam Roundhouse someday together. But anyway, let's take a look more. Hey, Andrew, the open air car on the U.S. Sugar Railroad's Express originally ran on the Santa Fe Super Cheap back in the 1950s. That's nice. We got the tool car from the Santa Fe Super Chief at the 2926. Did you know that the paint scheme on the U.S. Sugar Railroad's Sugar Express passenger cars are based off the Illinois Central City of Miami passenger train? No, I did not. By the way, has there any? Yes, we read that. Okay, has there been any news on 428's restoration? Nope. We read that one already. Just out of curiosity, what are Jim's thoughts on the Lion Chief 726 Berkshire? It's based on the original 726 from the post-war era.
I don't follow O-gauge model railroading that much, so I wouldn't know.
I don't know either.
But I do know that Lion Chief is, kind of like bottom end stuff for people who can't afford very detailed models. So,
all right, let's see.
Whatever.
You guys, okay. Jim might like this, but my model railroad club, I saw a beautiful HO scale New York Central J1E Hudson on my channel. There is a video of an HO scale New Haven I-4 Pacific running. Okay. Let's see. Ironically, let's see. Have you ever heard of New Haven R3482 Mountain Type Southern Pacific 210 Santa Fe Type 982? I've heard of some of these. Let's see. So, Andrew, when are you going to come to Ohio? Really?
Yes, John.
Also, Tyler, when it comes to, saying about those extinct GS8s, I already realized that they were cotton belt locomotives, so yeah, you don't have to remind me. Let's see, then he's talking about 222, then the comment about the Hudson, then getting excited about 1243 and 1242. Let's see, then you were looking up then he said, did you look up Time Machine, the old steam locomotive, Cedar Point Rapids, man saved, or what I call the unknown story of Illinois Central 790, whatever.
I looked that up. Couldn't find a really good video. All right.
I heard something about.
Seriously, we got another troll.
I noticed. But anyway, though, that will be.
Have you blocked him?
Yes. But anyway,
Good.
that will be this episode of Bumming Subjects. Tune in next time, because next time is going to be which will be in 2 weeks. The new schedule goes that next week there will be no burning subjects. The week after that, there will be. But next time on Burning Subjects, we will be talking about a list from me of my top 10 favorite steam locomotives that have not ran excursions in preservation, as in locomotives that have moved under their own power, but have never operated excursions. It's going to be an interesting list. So I guess you could say this will be the top 10 non-steam excursion stars. So we will see you guys in a couple of weeks.